Welcome to Incredible Idaho. I'm Jack Hemingway, sitting in tonight for our host, Wayne Walker. You know, from time to time on our show, we've used paintings to illustrate stories about Idaho history, happenings that took place long before the advent of videotape, or even before the first primitive photographs. Only in the imagination of an artist can we find the pictures to portray the history of the mountain man or the heritage of the bow hunter, a legacy that's figured so highly in the traditions of sportsmen today. In the course of searching for these historical portrayals, we found ourselves relying quite heavily on one artist in particular, and discovered that not only does he take great pride in accurately depicting Idaho's history, but his talents range far beyond.
I call myself a journalistic artist, trying to record some of the history. Maybe it's just painting a bird, but that bird may be gone someday. So, all of this is all interrelated to my inner feelings of preservation, maintaining the environment, creating something that's beautiful people want to look at, maybe put in their homes, hopefully.
Or on their hunting licenses. Anyone who's purchased an Idaho archery, muzzleloader, or upland bird stamp is probably familiar with Ralph Harris's work. This past year, more than 32,000 upland bird stamps were sold to hunters and collectors, featuring Ralph's classic design of chukar partridges soaring above the spectacular Bruneau Canyon.
The stamps have been one of the major elements of my whole career. It's given me a lot of prestige, a lot of ability to interrelate to the government, Forest Service, the Fish and Game, a lot of other avenues that sort of plug in that one doesn't even anticipate. It's doing something for the environment as well as for the government, the Fish and Game Department, all of that. It ties in really nicely.
Royalties from the sale of prints go to both the artist and to support the upland game bird habitat. But the world of the wildlife artist can be a demanding one. Ralph believes emphatically that every element of his creations be portrayed accurately, from the animals themselves to the most minute details of the surrounding environment. Today, he's modifying this design in response to some suggestions from a Yellowstone grizzly bear biologist.
Like this particular guy right here, he's got to be made to look like a smaller, younger bear. So we're going to have to take some of the detail or definition out of the face, make it rounder, make it look a little long, softer.
According to the biologist, an adult male bear would not be found within such close proximity to a female with cubs. So Ralph erases a few years on the grizzly with some subtle sweeps of his brush, shortening the nose and blurring the angular face.
All of the paintings are like that, I have, especially when you get into wildlife. Everybody, especially biologists or people that are in the know, can nail down problems immediately. And if one's doing that, if you're accepting that discipline, you want to go into that area, you got to accept that somebody out there is going to say, this isn't right, the paws aren't right, the expression isn't right, the movement isn't right.
Here, Ralph is using the word discipline to describe a field of study. But he also uses the same word to characterize the lifestyle of a successful artist.
You have to be very dedicated, disciplined, very disciplined, self-disciplined, because you don't have a time schedule to punch in and punch out. That once the thought process happens, you start laying it out, then it becomes a competition almost, where you want to make it, you have an image back here the way you want it to look, and it never comes out like that. So it's a constant fighting with the texture, the composition, the color, all that business.
Ralph uses acrylics, mixing the various shades and hues from a few primary colors on his palette.
More intensity to the
Even basic black becomes quite complex.
A little bit of blue. And then I can balance it to the warm or the cool side in the black. You can make it, see that's kind of a dark blue black, and then if I add a little bit of red here, I can turn it to the reddish scale, like that.
It seems somehow the artist sees our world through totally different eyes. Ralph explains that he breaks down every element in his compositions to rounded shapes, ellipses, circles, and cones. Each has a cool, shaded side opposite a warmer, lighter part. And when it comes to feathers and furs, the lifelike quality is the painstaking result of some very specific and delicate techniques.
I'll put down a very dark color underneath, and then I'll take that color and put the fur over the top of it, because it has a tendency, if you just try to paint fur, it comes out very flat. And so then I will take that and maybe take a lighter color of it, or redden it a little bit. And then put that over the top, and it has a tendency to give it more volume, more shape to it.
The final touches depend on whether the fur is wet, in sunlight, or in shade. It's a slow, methodical process, and one that requires a tremendous amount of creativity, mixed with large measures of patience and precision.
It's a hate and love situation constantly. There's a certain phase where it goes through and you just want to go, yuck, I hope nobody walks in to see this, because it's such a mess. And you just pray that it comes together.
Obviously, it has come together over and over again for Ralph. This fourth-generation Idahoan grew up in the Wood River Valley. When he's not in his studio, he's either working as a professional ski instructor at Sun Valley or spending time in the outdoors with his camera, shooting the backgrounds featured in his paintings. His art portfolio is a reflection of his life. For years, Ralph Harris has been the artist designing the regular Pointers feature in Ski Magazine. And Ketchum's annual Wagon Days Festival, an homage to its mining past, has commissioned Ralph to design prints commemorating the festivities. In these disciplines, too, Ralph emphasizes accuracy. This design is based on photographs of downtown Ketchum before the fire of 1896. The buildings on the left side of the street were all lost in the fire, but regular visitors to Ketchum will see some familiar structures on the right.
The most recognizable building is the Comstock and Clark building, which was a bank. It later became the Pete Lane building. Pete Lane then developed a ski shop in Sun Valley right after Sun Valley was built. His family were early pioneers here.
In addition to the hundreds of hours that go into the actual painting of a composition, it is quite apparent from the detail in Ralph's designs that this artist spends an enormous amount of preliminary time researching his subject matter. The Native American aspects of his archery prints have been discussed in length with members of the Shoshone-Bannock tribes, from the detail in the weaponry to the markings on the Indian ponies. And the mountain man era depicted in Ralph's muzzleloader artwork is a result of trips to modern-day trapper rendezvous. This recently released 1995 design features Ralph's childhood friend in full mountain man attire posed against the spectacular Boulder Mountains. Each of Ralph's designs is a complete image, a moment frozen in time that begins in the recesses of the artist's imagination and magically becomes canvas and color. It's an agonizingly slow process, but one that's creating history, something that will last, something that moves the discriminating viewer.
That's when it really gets exciting. Somebody will walk up and they'll just stand there and look at it. Come over here and look at that, and then they'll look at something else and they'll stand back, and then they'll call their friends over. Hey, come look at this. This is really something, you know. Look at the color. Then that's when it gets exciting.
No, they're not real happy. They got pretty good canines. He's a little worn. We've got a male.
The pine marten is a creature most of us have probably never seen in the wild. It's a member of the mustelid family, a little cousin to the wolverine and the otter. But don't let its small stature fool you. What it may lack in size, it more than makes up in attitude. It's almost unbelievable that such a sweet-faced little animal could emit this savage sound. And it's about to intensify as Fish and Game reservist David Hawks prepares to do the unthinkable and reach into the pen to capture the creature.
Dad thought he was sick.
I like to grab them by either the head or the tail, although they're a pretty durable animal. You generally won't hurt them, no matter where you pick them up. That's what I try for, right like that.
He's the size of a small house cat, a cat with a huge chip on his shoulder.
No, they're not real happy. They got pretty good canines. He's a little worn. We've got a male.
He's about to be a pioneer, in a sense, one of a small group of pine martens that will be released into the Caribou National Forest in the southeast corner of Idaho. He'll be joined by 6 of his fellow captives who have been temporarily held here in individual pens at David Hawk's mink farm.
I hog ring these like this because I don't want any chance of them getting out. And they're different from a mink in the way they use their paws, their front paws. They can use them almost like you'd think a monkey or a person would, because they can reach and pull and grab with their front paws, and a mink won't do that.
Historical records indicate that pine martens were prevalent in this corner of the state until the 1930s and 40s. They are easily trapped and probably disappeared from the area due to overharvest. Now, with the help of volunteers like David Hawks, the pine marten is returning to its historical habitat.
They say they're an indicator species. If the habitat's healthy, why, there'll be marten in there, and I hope that you know, we can get a decent population of marten. You know, whether or not they trap them later on down the road, why, that'd be nice if the population's that healthy, but even if they're not, why, you know, they're kind of a neat critter. You don't hardly ever see them. I've only ever seen one in my whole life in the wild. They're just kind of neat to have out there.
The final pioneer is no happier than the first captive. He receives ear tag number 45 and is unceremoniously stuffed into his wooden traveling case, still protesting violently. From here, it's an hour by truck, followed by a mile or so of snowmobile trail to the release site. The pine marten program was initiated by Fish and Game biologist Carl Anderson in cooperation with the Caribou National Forest.
So they used to be here, and I knew that they weren't now. And I just thought it would be kind of a rewarding and productive kind of a thing to return these animals to habitat that they used to occupy.
Looky there.
Carl contracted with a trapper near Salmon to capture the pine martens in live traps. Small wire cages about the size of a large shoebox. So far, 42 martens have been captured near Salmon and then released in this general area over the last 2 winters.
I try to spread them out because they're, you know, naturally not real dense in population. They don't hang around together. They're solitary animals, so I try to spread them out a little bit, but we want them, you know, to have a chance of running into each other later on. You know what I mean?
4 martens, 2 females and 2 males, will be left at this site in separate wire pens. The process is called a soft release, a sort of modified method of liberation that requires more attention on the part of the biologists, but seems to be worth the extra effort involved.
Well, the idea here is that we place them in these pens and hold them here for 3 or 4 days, and I'll come back every day, check on them and feed them, make sure they're okay. They found in other areas where they've done this with them, when they had radios on that they could follow the animals, that this tends to encourage them to stay in this general area once they're released instead of taking off and traveling long distance.
While they're still in the pens, the pine martens will be fed meat from a roadkill deer. But their normal diet consists of small prey, mainly rodents and the occasional squirrel or rabbit. Carl will attempt to check their progress with the use of cameras like this one. It contains an infrared detector that snaps a photograph when a warm-blooded animal feeds on the nearby carcass. But why all this fuss over a creature most of us will never see?
Because we're people and we're concerned and interested in wildlife and nature in general, and it's just an opportunity to bring something back that has been removed or taken away, in this case, I believe, by the action of human beings back in the past.
Well, the people that say you're nuts don't really like to be out in the winter, apparently.
The southeastern corner of our state boasts about 30 storage reservoirs literally stocked full of opportunity for Idaho anglers. And for many of us who can never get enough of our fishing, cold weather is no reason to refrain from pursuing our favorite sport.
Okay. Got it. Well, the ice fishing just adds a few more months of fishing opportunity. A lot of people just really like to fish, and they kind of hate to quit at the end of the fall.
Hi. They were doing a survey this week today on the fishing. I'd like to ask a few questions, if you don't mind.
Dick Scully is the fisheries manager for the southeast region of the state. You will find him out talking to anglers all year round in all kinds of weather, measuring their catch, tracking the hours spent fishing, and assessing the opportunity and success.
We're trying to keep track of what's being caught out of here, and we do this twice a week all year round. Gives us a pretty good idea what's left and how fast fish are growing and how fast they're being caught.
Last week, but they ain't done much today.
Oh, and you're ice fishing here last week?
The reservoir was stocked last spring with 9-inch trout, 25 fish per acre, and again this fall with 6-inch trout, 84 fish per acre. The records have shown that fish stocked in previous years have fared well here and afforded good fishing opportunity for anglers.
Body condition's pretty good. They're not real fat, but they're fatter than most trout you see in reservoirs, so they're looking pretty good.
Dick says that bright sunny mornings like this one are not always the best for ice fishing. But just being outside on a beautiful winter day may be reward enough.
I caught 2 little bitty ones this morning.
It appears from the grin on this angler's face that the size of the catch isn't always the measure of a good time.
So is this retirement?
This is retirement, and I love it.
So what is the appeal of this sport? As in most matters, it depends on who you talk to. Dick Scully, as you may already have guessed, is a pretty serious fisherman. When he's not working, he's out here himself drilling holes in the ice with all the enthusiasm of a small boy with a new power toy.
Well, I like to drill several holes so that I can try several spots, and sometimes I'll go to a point and go out and just start drilling straight along the point, maybe drill 8 or 10 holes in a row about 10 feet apart, and I just fish each one for a few minutes until I find one where there's fish in it.
Once Dick finds a successful hole, he drills several more in the same area. Then the fun begins.
Well, the appeal of ice fishing is being so close to the fish is one thing. You're usually just fishing about 4 or 5, well, depending on how deep the water is, but it's right underneath you. Fishing through a small hole and feeling the action, there's really a lot more bites, it seems like, per hour ice fishing than a lot of the summertime fishing. And I think there's something to using multiple rods to kind of keeping track of more than one rod at once and running back and forth when you see a bite on one rod or the other. Yeah, right, 15 inches or so. Nice. Pretty female. Yeah, this is pretty typical. This is one of the fish that was stocked a year ago in September at 6 inches, and now, again, he's probably about 15 inches.
Dick's fishing partner, Greg Turtelot, enjoys the social aspects of ice fishing. The idea that the folks you've come fishing with are not spread up and down the banks of a stream or lake like they most likely would be in the summer.
You're not casting, so you're not worrying about crossing lines and that type of stuff. You can all sit together in one bunch and tell lies and make fun of one another when you lose a fish. Maybe even get a little competitive so you can beat somebody to the pole, that type of stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Whatever the appeal, social, serious, or just a good excuse to take advantage of a gorgeous winter day, as the saying goes, even a bad day fishing always beats a good day at the office. Thanks for joining us. As we close tonight, we'll take you back to the southeast corner of our state, to a winter season of sunshine and snow. For more information on wildlife artist Ralph Harris, pick up the winter issue of Idaho Wildlife at your local Fish and Game office. Or call toll-free 1-800-IDA-WILD.